I'm going to have to request that once we actually start, you guys need to stop playing Diablo.
I don't think we need to do that.
I do, because you guys will get distracted, and we
Do
will
I need
not
to
be.
point out the number of times that you've played a game while recording a podcast?
He
And
played Gran Turismo, like, B-Spec, whatever. So that's not a video game. That's numbers.
Gran Turismo B-Spec is literally, I'm going to watch this car go around and around. It's like watching NASCAR.
Here's the thing. Now wait. Here's the thing. I agree with John, because I know I can't concentrate on do this at the same time. But but seriously, there's no way that John was paying attention all the time when he's been playing video games.
Oh, no, I don't. But I don't need to. I'm not the one who's going to be carrying the Diablo discussion.
The what discussion? I don't even know what you're talking about. Steven, I need help!
No, I'm fighting champions, and you're not even over here. What the hell?
Welcome to episode 45 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. You know, screw it. I don't want to do this. I'm going to go back to playing Diablo. I don't want to do this.
I'm already playing.
Can we do... Steven, we all promised we weren't going to play Diablo.
I'm not playing. I lied.
You know, I will log on to Battle.net right now and see if you're playing.
No, you're not, Rob. Because if Rob logs on to Battle.net,
real
he
dangerous.
continues to play.
Okay,
It's
all right.
like, I just got to go and check, see if Steven's online, make sure
wait.
Okay.
Wait,
Check
it
my
doesn't
auction
say
house
he's online, but
sales.
you know, like maybe he's like hidden in the game. So
Okay, fine. So, yeah, I'm Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards, Diablo 3 addict. Joining me today, we have Master and Commander of the Universe.
This is John McCarroll. I am John on our forums.
Yes, he is. We have the other guy who is addicted to Diablo 3 about as much as I am, and he's probably going to lose his new job because of it. Would you stop?
What? Oh, sorry. Stephen Meyering, Talos on the boards.
All right, and then newly college graduate ladies, he is legal now.
I've been legal for a while, man.
Woo!
I'm Zach. I'm super flat on the boards, and now that I've graduated from college, that means I'm a full-fledged adult with a mortgage, a drinking problem, 3 children, and a problematic marriage. Only one of those are true. Only one of those, I'll let you guys guess.
I'm going to go with the drinking problem. You've had that stored up, didn't you? Like, you were working on that before the show?
I workshopped it.
Yeah. You know, I was watching Deathly Hallows Part 2 today, and I immediately thought about my 2 colleagues, Steven and Zach. That movie sucks.
I haven't seen it.
It's not very good. I do like the giant Kamehameha at the end of the movie. Like, you know, it goes all Dragon Ball.
Hey, I'm really excited for Dragon Ball Z Connect, because Connect is all audio, and so you can just power up by yelling at your Xbox.
I want to play it. So, yes, we have a lot of Diablo to talk about, but...
And actually, before we get
Yes.
into Diablo, I'm just going to make sure everyone knows that Rob is in the minority about Deathly Hallows Part 2. Don't try to...
This is not the Harry Potter podcast.
We have 2 people that write and perform in fan fiction, all right?
That's not fan fiction is a little bit strong there. It's charity improv, sir.
Oh, boy.
And hey, I graduated, so I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, sure. You're going to go back and do it again.
No,
All right.
no, sir.
So we obviously have a lot of Diablo 3 to talk about. It's kind of taken over all of our lives, except somehow John has been able to play it and not succumb to its siren song just yet. But before we talk about that, because that'll probably take up way too much of the show, we have another game to talk about, a game that I cannot pronounce, apparently.
Yes, according to Rob's last post, it says Gungnir.
Gungnir is great.
Did I really write that up? Yeah, I did.
You totally did.
Yeah, when we're putting together the podcast, he's like, "Where's that Gungnir interview that you did?" Which will be at the end of this podcast. We talked to a couple of folks at Atlas about the upcoming Sting title Gungnir, which, as I told Rob, is the name of Odin's spear. Which all the Department Heaven games have the whole Norse mythology thing going for them. But yeah, no, Gungnir is going to be out the week after E3, so it's kind of we do this now or we're going to be waiting a while.
All right, so tell us about the game a little bit. So these are the guys that also did Knights of the Nightmare?
Yeah, Knights of the Nightmare and Yggdra Union and Riviera.
Which was awesome.
Yes, all of which are very good games, except I really didn't like Knights of the Nightmare. But anyway, so as everyone knows, kind of Sting is known for having these absolutely crazy games, and there's a scale of crazy, but every one of them is kind of unique in the way that they approach things. It's not, let's take the standard RPG or strategy RPG or bullet hell plus strategy genre, which I don't think actually exists, and modify it. It's, let's start and let's do something that's completely unique within these spaces. And what's interesting about Gungnir is Gungnir exists in the space of time is important. And what's incredibly unique is your turn comes up after a certain amount of time. There's a little clock that is on every turn, and it turns and it turns and it turns and it turns. Each one of those is 1 hour or 1 minute or something like that. I think it's 1 hour. And when it's your turn, you can move one character and perform one action. So, but you can control any character. So you have your party's only going to be like 4 or 5 characters on every map. So it's not like, oh, here's your army. You only have 1 turn for each of these people. But oftentimes you'll get 2 or 3 turns before the enemies get their turns. But the enemies all have their own unique turns. This is going to get really complicated if I go in depth into it. But we're actually going to be posting a gameplay video where I literally just go through an entire mission. So look for that soon.
Really?
Yes, I pulled the footage and I'm doing the voiceover.
That's quite awesome. I look forward to that.
We're starting to do video stuff because I have a thing that lets me record footage.
Well, we did one video review, didn't we? We did the video review for Final Fantasy 13-2, right?
No. I said that I would, and then I got held for time, and we never actually produced it.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I tried to avoid that like the plague, so I didn't. Yeah.
So that will probably be our first video thing. But the game is very unique in regards to the elements that it brings. And it's one of those titles where I'm going to run into this when I write my review. It's going to be incredibly difficult to say, okay, well, here's how you break this down without spending 900 words just talking about gameplay systems, because that's how the Sting games work. Mm-hmm. But needless to say, you can drop in interrupts, where it's like, oh, I want to take my turn now. If you gain enough tactics points, which you get from moving different characters around, which it's an incredibly complicated game, but much like the other Sting games, everything fits together.
Well, that's what scared me off a little bit about Knights of the Nightmare. When I kind of read up on that game, I was like, whoa, this seems like math. And I don't know if I want to play this.
And Knights of the Nightmare is by far the most complicated of the Sting games that we've seen in North America, and I think even of those just released in Japan as well. Knights of the Nightmare is on one end of the scale of crazy, where like Riviera and Hex's Force are on the other end.
Yeah, I remember I played all 3 of them, and I liked Hex's Force. That's like the most vanilla of them, but Knights of the Nightmare is very complex. I mean, I think it's fun, but it's not friendly to the new player.
Yeah, and I don't know who it is friendly towards, and I think that part of it is that it is unfriendly. It's for the hardcore person that likes both bullet hell shooters and strategy RPGs, which surprisingly there are a great deal of, because I'm one of those people.
If you're a fan of bullet hell shooters and strategy games,
you might like Knights in the Nightmare.
Are we doing bad Amazon things tonight? You might like Frontline, Fuels of War. You might like Left 4 Dead 2. You might like Mario Kart.
Ah, boy.
But it's incredibly difficult to go into Gungnir, and I've tried practicing for this podcast, and like, what am I going to say? And it's like one of the reasons I recorded the footage for the Gungnir video preview like a week and a half ago, and I'm still going like, what the hell am I going to say for, the battle's like 15 minutes long. I might just put in like a 2-minute intro where I talk about it and then let the footage go. But it's a very unique game. The story is pretty interesting. You're a member of a resistance force against a overpowering empire. Which
Whoa! Now wait a minute here. That just sounds so new and fresh for the JRPG. I mean,
and then this giant spear falls from the earth or falls from the sky after your friends are executed, and then you become like the herald of somebody.
Zakarum. Sorry, I had to throw a Diablo reference in there.
Why is it always that we're fighting against an evil, oppressive empire? Why can't we just be the empire and oppress other people?
You know what? That's one of the reasons I really enjoy the Deception games.
Oh yeah, you were saying that those games were like made for me, and I still need to play them.
Yeah, you start out and you're like, oh, by the way, you're evil, and you need to kill everyone who comes into your castle.
Yeah, you like make spike traps and stuff for like your dinner
Yes.
guests.
Yes. No,
I need to play. John, do you have an old copy of that? I would really like to play that at some.
I'll see if I can find a copy of Trapped. Trapped is the one for PS2. It has an awful story, but it's got the best gameplay out of them because the first three were PS1 titles, and they're all kind of archaic at this point.
Okay, I want to play a game where I can like make a throne of death for people to sit on.
Yeah, those are interesting games, and I think that there should be more games where you get to play as the bad guys.
Yeah, I always I don't know why, but I really like that, and not like a moral choice system. I don't want any of this like, oh, I'm gonna be Paragon or Renegade, and I'm gonna hit the big red button or something. Like I want to just be outright evil.
I think it would be very interesting to see a JRPG come into it with that, and I can't think of any off the top of my head that do. Like, and it could be a Western RPG too. Like you have The Witcher, where you're kind of in the gray area, but as long as you have a set story where you're the bad guy, I think it would work well. You have Baten Kaitos where you got that garbage going on, but that doesn't count.
Didn't you fight God in that game?
No, I think that was Xenogears.
Okay.
Yeah, Baten Kaitos is just like bizarre.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to?
No, I'm.
Are we not?
You guys don't have any questions about Gungnir? It's like I just want to talk about Diablo.
So it's a strategy RPG.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is a strategy RPG.
How similar is it to say Riviera? That which was the last.
Well, Riviera is not Riviera is like not a strategy RPG, so not at all.
Not at all. All right, there you go.
Yeah, it kind of Riviera focuses a lot on items, and Igor Union focuses on keeping your troops with morale from battle to battle. Like you have static statistics. Like if you get hurt in one battle, you start the next battle hurt unless you use an item to heal yourself. Gungnir's thing is time, where you really have to focus on, okay, when can I take my turns? Your characters, if they take an action, even if your turn pops up again, they can't act except if you reduce their max hit points. If you really need to use that guy again before it's possible for him to move, you can, but it will hurt you.
Can you stock, like, I'm not clear on how this works, but can you stock up time to like say if you want to like combo a turn with like 4 guys, could you stock up enough time to do that, or is it literally
literally
time?
Your turn comes up and you can move it along. Like say you say, okay, I want to wait for the other guy to act. You can say I want to go forward 3 hours, and it will then be your turn again after that action.
Okay.
I know what system I didn't go into, the beat system. So I talk about this. What's funny is your people who are listening to this, you then get to hear me talk about Gungnir again with the folks from Atlas. So I'm trying not to be too repetitive. But the beat system works kind of like the link system from Front Mission, where if you have guys in the right place,
oh yeah, I remember that.
When you do an attack, those other guys will join in.
I loved that in Front Mission. I really, really liked that.
Yeah, I say on the podcast, I was really bummed that Front Mission 5 never got a localization in North America, and that was the one that did the link system the best.
Was 4 the bad one? Was 4 the bad one that we got?
Yeah, well, we got 3 and 4. 3 was pretty decent. 4 was the one that introduced the link system, and it was only bad because the AI was really dumb, which Gungnir does the exact same thing, where it spawns like 10 enemies to fight your 4 guys, and only a certain amount of them will start moving, and then others will move as you kill those guys. And it's like, I don't, that's the one thing I don't like about the game, is I'd rather them say, okay, here are the guys that you have to fight, make it work.
Yeah, I really want a return of the Front Mission series. Not as an online action game that no one asked for. Like, I want a real hardcore strategy game again.
like I said,
Yeah,
I was
that's
really
always Good.
really disappointed that Front Mission 5 didn't make it to North America in a way that was supported by the publishers.
We got that third-person shooter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that worked out so well for Square Enix when they made Dirge of Cerberus. Oh.
Dirge of Cerberus sold a surprising amount of copies, even though the game was not very good. Looking back, one thing that we always discuss, and this is an aside, and then we can let Rob talk about Diablo for 2.5 hours. One thing as reviewers is oftentimes you do look back and you say, you know what, I wish that I could give something a different score. I wish I could say something different about it, because sometimes it does take more time. I actually enjoyed Dirge of Cerberus when I played it the first time, and I gave it, I think, a 73 for RPG Fan. And I think if I would go back, I'd drop that score by 10 or 15 points, because while I enjoyed it, looking back, it's not a particularly good game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you a lot. I mean, there have been some games that I wish I could go back and maybe give an editor's choice to. Some games that have stood up better than others. And Fallout 3 has aged very, very well. It's still very fun. And I like the fact that that is my highest reviewed game on the website, because I got to review the Game of the Year edition with all the frills and stuff added to it, so that definitely played a part in my review score. And I think John would also be I think I'm speaking for John when I also say that sometimes you may enjoy a game more than the score that it deserves. And very famously, I gave Dark Souls a 90. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but it's a 90. I mean, it does have some issues here and there. It's not a perfect game, but I enjoy that game far more than the score that I gave it.
I think that I don't remember if we've had this discussion before on the podcast, but it's certainly a discussion we've had before as a staff, where is it how much you like a game or how objectively good you think the game is? And it's really difficult to strike a medium there, because different people will look at games different ways. I know I got a couple of mails when I reviewed Hyperdimension Neptunia 2, and I said, this game is significantly better than its predecessor, which I thought was absolutely abysmal. And I gave it a 60 because it was still pretty bad. But Dennis actually liked the first game and gave it a 74. And people said, well, why is it that you gave it a 60, but you gave the first game a 74? Well, I didn't review the first game.
Exactly. It's different reviewers.
Even though sometimes you see our outlet as having a unified voice, there are 15, 20 different people working on this website and reviewing different games.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually, it's interesting that you guys would bring that up today too, because I was actually telling some of my friends that, like, for me, I mean, I played Diablo 2 and Diablo 1 so much, and I wrote the review for Diablo 3, and I actually had to stop for a while. I wrote like 4 paragraphs and erased it all, because I was like, it's really difficult for me to be objective and write a review for this game for somebody that may not have played the other ones, but also like address people who go, okay, I played Diablo 2 for 5,000 hours. What do I need to know about 3?
And that's really interesting. It comes down to, who do you think your audience is going to be? Like, when I wrote my Final Fantasy 13-2 review, I went into it assuming that, based on the readership of RPG Fan, I assumed that the person was at least somewhat familiar with Final Fantasy 13.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is smart, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Steven and I were basically trying to push the Diablo 3 review onto each other, because I didn't want to review it. I had no desire to review that game. I mean, Diablo 3, as we start to move the discussion forward, Diablo 3, I am having an absolute ball with the game. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's great, but I think Steven's review, which I will be proofing tomorrow, and it will probably go up before the podcast, I very much agree with Steven's review, and it's not a perfect game, but it's a wonderful game that I'm very much enjoying, and I'm having a great time with it. So there's an element of, like, how much am I enjoying this game versus how objectively good is it? And you
can even go into the argument of, is there such thing as objectively good? Because essentially what a review is your experience with the game. So it really is kind of a balancing act of trying to figure out what it is that you really feel about something.
Yep.
John, and that's interesting too, because, like, everybody on the site, as far as I can tell, absolutely hated Tales of Symphonia: Dawn of the New World, and I played that and actually had a lot of fun with it. And everyone's like, "Oh, this game is garbage," and I was like, "Really? It wasn't that bad." So, I mean, objectively, I can say it was a pretty clunky game, but I had a blast with it. So,
I think that we've had this discussion before, where I think that you can like a game that is flawed, and I think you can love a game that's flawed. and you can recognize that it has flaws, but every person is looking for something a little bit different in their games. And we've had this discussion before where kind of with we've had this discussion with Robin and Kyle. They look for very different things in their games. And that's okay, because you know what? There are hundreds of games released every year, and there's one for each person. Even if I say I don't like it, even if I review your favorite game and I give it a 0 and I say this game is garbage, that's my thoughts on the game. And you know what? It's okay for me to disagree with you, and it's okay for you to love that game.
Mm-hmm. Well, also what's interesting is when you have games that try new things or games that scratch a particular niche audience, you can see a real disparity in review scores. I mean, the one Sony executive very adamantly said that he thought Demon's Souls was crap when he played it, and that's why they didn't bring it to America, and that game was able to find an audience. We're seeing it now with Dragon's Dogma, which is really getting scores of one guy gives it a 7 or a 6 and another guy gives it a 9, which, still is objectively on the good side of the scale, but it's showing a wide disparity in what do people think of this game. Is this game a title for everyone? And I think that that's the other thing. Certain games, I can put them in front of, people of all ages, of all different creeds and backgrounds, and they're going to enjoy, while other people maybe, Steven will like a more punishing game more than another player, for example.
Dark Souls is a great example of that. We love that game, but there are people who hate that game with just a fiery passion, and that's just an example of how...
I remember what I was going to talk about. Dragon's Dogma. Just Dragon's Dogma is... I've had a chance to play it. I'm really not enjoying it, but I can see kind of the people that do. Rob and I were talking about this before, during our pre-show, and you know what? Dragon's Dogma is really going to appeal to people that like Monster Hunter and people who like that kind of game. That's not me. I feel like, why am I doing this? There's really no point. There's no story in this. Yeah, the boss battles are cool when I climb on a guy and slice a Hydra's head off.
As long as you don't glitch into the floor.
Yeah. Well, I did glitch into the... what game did I glitch into the floor? It was like, oh, you found a secret, and respawned me. It was something I played recently. It may have been Dragon's Dogma, but I don't remember. But no, I mean, that goes on with there's a game for you, no matter who you are or what you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're all in some way enjoying Diablo 3, the latest magnum opus from Blizzard. It is good.
Hang on a second, I have to inhale my collector's edition.
Okay, so how pathetic is this that Steve and I are on opposite sides of the country? Not opposite sides of the country. I'm in Philly. Steven, were you still down in South Carolina at the time?
For another 3 weeks.
Okay, so Steven's down in South Carolina. I'm on the East Coast in Philly, and we both go to the midnight openings at our respective game stores. Both participate in trivia contests.
And both win.
Both win and buy our collector's editions for Diablo 3.
I got a very, very large display box of Diablo 3 for naming more Herodric Cube recipes than anybody else in the building. It wasn't even... I'm going to ring my own bell here. The next closest guy named 5. I named 13. And they were like, all right, we give up.
I don't even know what that thing is.
We had a general Diablo lore knowledge, and there were 65 possible points. I got 64 because I couldn't remember what one of the components to go into the secret cow level was. I forgot that it was it was a Tome of Town Portal. I forgot that part. But I knew everything else, so I got a 64 out of 65. The closest person to me got a 19.
Nice.
It was domination, absolute domination. So we get the game, we bring it home, we stay up till 3:30 in the morning, and we were clearly playing on it. Oh, that's right.
I didn't sleep. I meant to sleep, but I kept talking to my friends and hanging out. So instead of sleeping before work at 8 o'clock, I stayed awake staring at error 37.
Okay, so can we, before we start talking about the game, I have to talk about this. Error 37. The fact that in 12 hours a meme was created and then basically abolished because Blizzard got their act together. I have never seen that before, where there are now Error 37 t-shirts available on IGN. And I'm like, guys, that problem was a very limited amount of time on launch day. Really?
But That's how memes work. It's let's take something that was
ridiculous.
Yeah, or not ridiculous, but let's take something that was a shared experience, no matter how short of a shared experience. But because people were very gung ho and wanted to play, they kept, well, I want to get in, I want to get in, I want to get in, I want to get in.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's a very good point. Like,
but here's my point. Here's my point with the whole thing. Does anybody even know if Terra had a successful launch after its first day?
I don't know. It's still that game. Their servers are running.
You guys see the point I'm making here?
Ask Stephen Harris. He knows.
But
he actually liked it a lot.
The point that I'm making, and that's not to be disparaging on Terra. That's not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is that people were assaulting Diablo and Blizzard and saying how this was the single greatest travesty in the history of existence.
I believe after about 30 minutes, the word debacle was used by Kotaku. They were like, the Diablo 3 debacle. How can Blizzard avoid this in the future? And I was like, here's how they can avoid it. When 6 million people try to get into a box made for 500,000, some people fall by the wayside.
And now you could definitely make the argument that Blizzard should have been a little bit more up on it. These are the World of Warcraft guys.
But no. Hold on.
But you can't.
You truly can't. The game because when a game becomes the fastest selling PC game of all time, selling 3 point however many million copies in a single day, you can't prepare for that. You know what? They may. I think that Steven's exaggerating, saying they had a box for 500,000. But if you prepare for 2 million people in one day and you get 3.4,
yeah,
you're gonna have some issues.
And if I recall too, I read. I have a friend on Twitter. He does like IT work, and he said people don't understand when you have to install new server blades, you have to buy the hardware, get it, install the software on it, troubleshoot it, and then install it into the server farm, and that takes actual physical labor and time.
Like it's like building a computer, because all a server blade is a computer in a different format.
Right.
So literally it's like we need more servers. It's not like, oh, here, let me go to the store and pick up a server that's tailor-made for Diablo.
Pick up a fully configured Diablo 3 server blade.
Well, and that's what really aggravated me about the whole thing. Like, Steven, you and I played a fair bit of the beta, okay? Did we think that there was any way that they were going to flip that switch on and that game was going to start working at 3 a.m.? No, that's why I went to sleep. I was like, there is no way it's going to work. Like, I'm going to go to bed.
I maintained unrealistic hope. My best friend came over at 3 a.m. and I looked at him and I said, this game is going to go on at 3 a.m. and we aren't going to touch it until tomorrow. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, the servers are not going to work. I'm bracing myself for disappointment right now. And sure enough, by 5:30, 5:45ish, we were able to get on, but
after that I never saw it. When I started playing is about 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, here's what I did. Here was my Diablo 3 experience. I got my collector's edition. I brought it home. I went to bed. I woke up at 8:30 in the morning, brewed myself a cup of coffee, canceled class for my students, and sat down and played a wonderful 10-hour marathon of Diablo 3 with no connection issues until they kicked the servers down because they had major issues after the first 24 hours.
I got a copy. I got my box copy the day before it came out, and I started playing 2 days later.
Yeah. But literally, the internet exploded on this game. Major news sites were reporting that, this was the debacle. This was terrible. And I'm just sitting there going, like, what major online game? And we're going to get there in a second. We're going to talk about whether or not Diablo 3 has to be online. We are going to talk about that. But Diablo 3 is an online game. That's what it is. It has to be always connected to the internet. And what always connected to the internet out the gate game has ever been perfect?
None, especially in World of Warcraft.
One thing that I find interesting is it seemed like the hate machine surrounding this was worse than Sony got when they leaked information when they got hacked.
Yeah. Credit cards were compromised, and that was less of a deal.
Credit cards and personally identifying information are important information people can't lose. But, dude, I have to find SOJs, and I have to do it now.
I think that's what really frustrated me about the Diablo 3 craziness. And now, thankfully, most major review sites waited to review the game until after a week. You know, they let the servers get calmed down. People actually beat the game. That's one thing that nobody was really calling anybody out on, was the fact that nobody got to play this game early. Blizzard was emphatic. The servers went on at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nobody played Diablo 3 early and could beat it early, except for that one guy in Korea that beat the game in like 8 hours. But that dude's crazy. But like, the next day, you had reviews going up on small, websites of people trying to get user scores, giving the game 1 out of 10, saying it doesn't work, it's broken.
Well, what's funny is it's the same deal with the Mass Effect 3. It got user bombed on Metacritic, which, you can have whatever idea you want with Metacritic as a tool, but like there's absolutely no trusting Metacritic in regards to user titles anymore, because literally they're all just totally broken if there's anything that anyone might not like a tiny bit about it.
Yeah, basically.
And
you know what? I don't think we should downplay that some people are having legitimate connection issues, because
exactly.
they still are, and I definitely feel bad for those people. And some people on the site have actually had problems with it, and I don't doubt that they did, and that really sucks because I'm having a blast, and if I couldn't get connected, I'd be really mad.
Yeah,
but
I think that because it's the internet, things get magnified.
Definitely.
It's think about it. 3.5 or 3.4 or whatever million people, and then 6 in one day, and 6 million in a week. And even if you have 15,000 people posting about major issues, think about it. That's sub 0.1%.
Good point.
But it's a debacle.
It's a debacle. You know what? I think what it really all stems from is that the game is ridiculously anticipated, and everybody loved Diablo. Basically, almost everybody loved Diablo 2. And they're finally like, oh, I can play 3. Wait, I can't. Oh, my God, I hate you, Blizzard. That sort of thing. I feel like some of the most vocal people were probably some of the biggest fans of Diablo.
Doing the math, I don't want to sound like an idiot. That's not sub 0.1%. That's sub 1%. Just doing the math in my head and correcting myself.
Yeah, it's just disappointing to me, because I think the internet was like primed to hate on this game, and they turned around and people started losing their minds. And hold on a sec, guys, I'm about ready to sneeze. Nope, holding it back. Within 24 hours, most of the major issues were resolved, and a lot of people were playing the game and having a great deal of fun with it. And, Steven's right. We have some guys on the website. I know Dave's been having a really hard time playing, and that breaks my heart. And, I really wish there was something that could be done there. I don't know where the problem is coming in. That sucks. Because I think as we move away from the debacle of Diablo argument and start talking about the actual game, I think the actual game is pretty freaking awesome.
Is really quite fantastic, actually.
It's okay.
Oh, John.
He's important. We can't block him from the podcast, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I think he's got your E3 tickets, so you're kind of screwed.
Hey, I never played Diablo 2 until about 2 weeks ago, and I tried to play Diablo 2, and that game is okay, but Diablo 3 is pretty good. I'm throwing that opinion out there.
I think that opinion will have some people on the internet just trying to attack you.
Yeah. Well, here, let me go into my experience a little bit. Diablo 2, I was trying to play in anticipation of this game, and because everyone's like, oh, it's the best game ever. I've played millions of hours. I started playing as a necromancer and ran into a lot of the issues issues, I should say, air quotes, that some people hold as quintessential parts of the Diablo experience, namely creating a character build and going through the ladder mode and playing with other people. I had a lot of problems because I had no clue what I was doing. It was my first time ever through the game. And I made it to the end of Act 1 and a little bit into Act 2 and just ran into a whole bunch of problems trying to create, like the perfect character, picking and choosing each necromancer skill. Like what the biggest problem I ran into is, what is going to be better for me one extra point into extra skeletons, or do I want the skeletal mage, or maybe I want skeleton mastery. And Diablo 3 does away with all of that, and it's so great.
I think you're going to run into basically two schools of thought there. You're going to run into people who say that's the game, deal with it. The point is the trial and error. And then you're going to run into people who say, I shouldn't have to I shouldn't be able to break my character within 2 hours of playing. I mean, it got to the point where I would be playing Diablo 2 and I'd start a new character and I wouldn't put any points in until I was like level 30, because it's like, well, I just got to wait and dump them all into one skill.
I think that you can come to a middle ground there. Like, I'm totally happy with the way that Wizard handled skills in Diablo 3 because it's functional and it works. But I think that you can also take skill trees and do them better than Diablo did. Diablo did fine for its time for skill trees, but it lacks a respec. I think you give people the ability to respec, and the whole issue of I have to rebuild my character goes away.
They actually added respecs in a patch late. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. You actually get 3 respecs per character.
Well,
but the problem with the respect is that you still, and I agree with John that would clear up a lot of the problems, but then the problem becomes like, okay, so now you reach level 30, and so you have 150 attribute points to put in. So now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do 20 attribute here and 40 attributes here. And yeah, it's a better system than not being able to respect, of course, but it still gets to the inherent problem of like, in Diablo 2, because of the way that the game was made, and this is why Diablo 3 works so much better in this respect, Diablo 2 was made, just get enough strength to be able to equip the best equipment, same with Dex.
Dump it into Vitality.
And then dump everything into Vitality for keeping you alive. The one thing that I think no one's really commented too much on Diablo 3 is that this plays very, very well as an action RPG. I mean, when you start playing on the higher difficulty levels, it becomes a game of crowd control and resource management and making sure that those health globes are on the ground and you run up to them. I mean, everything has been crafted and layered together, whereas I think in Diablo 2 the skill trees were an awesome idea, and it was one of the first games to really have an effective skill tree, but it was kind of on its own little island. Everything in Diablo 3 has been integrated together, from each character class having their own resource and the own way that it behaves, their abilities, their passive skills. Everything is linked together, and there are so many different builds that you can get, and you don't even have to worry about a respec, because I can just sit there and go, well, wait a minute, I've been playing as my witch doctor for a while. Why don't I make it so my minions have a little bit more survivability, and now I'm going to equip some items that give me some life leech skills, and now they get the benefit of those life leech skills. That's the thought process that starts to happen.
There's a lot more strategy than there is simply, okay, well, this is a predetermined build that I know is quantifiably better than this other build. A lot of the interviews that the designers on Diablo 3 were doing are talking about how there's now, like 1 billion viable builds or whatever. And, granted, this, 1 billion is probably a little bit stretching it, but I've certainly found at least a good, 6 different ways, to comfortably play my monk. And not have to worry about, or even if I was worrying about some skill, I could just switch it out real quick, see how much better something else was, and then go from there.
And what I found too is, I told this to Rob, and I think actually I might have mentioned it to John, I can't remember, but for me, the way the skill system works now reminds me a lot of the first Guild Wars or Phantom Dust or building a Magic the Gathering deck. Now it's a matter of, okay, this is what I have at my disposal. I don't have to worry about putting points into it or respecing. I can mix and match these any way I want to make them most effective. Which passes will work the best to make this skill most effective for me? Which defensive skill will play best into the way I play? As a wizard, I tend to run directly into the fray, use Archon, and then start pounding the ground like a psycho. So, of course, it's good to have, ice armor not ice armor. I can't even remember the name of the skill. It crystallizes and absorbs a ton of damage. So I can run into the fray, absorb a ton of damage, and just be pounding enemies. Whereas conversely, somebody else could say, I want to use Arcane Orb a lot, and I want to do a ton of damage from far away. They can pump stats into Glass Cannon, which gives you, bonus damage but takes away armor, and stay out of the fight but do a ton of damage that way. And it's like building a deck in Magic the Gathering, and for me, it works really well.
Now, the problem that does create, and this gets to what Zach was talking about before the show, normal mode in this game is Training Wheel City.
Brutally easy.
It's
Really,
brutally
really
easy. You don't open up a lot of skills very quickly. It feels very limited when you first started playing this game on normal. Like, it's been kind of rough because, I barreled through the game with my Witch Doctor. I got to the end of Nightmare and I started playing as some other character classes. And the beginning of the game is easy and slow, and you don't have a lot of variability. Now, the skills start coming quickly, especially at the end of Act 1. You really start getting more things opening up, and it really starts to develop. But this game is interesting in that they don't anticipate you replaying the game. If you have a level 60 Demon Hunter, they don't anticipate you restarting another Demon Hunter unless you want to try hardcore mode, the mode where if you die, they wipe your character.
Now, what makes you say that? Because there are 10 character slots.
Right, and so what that means is that you have 5 slots for softcore characters and 5 slots for hardcore characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I suppose that's what it boils down to. I mean, for me, I never play hardcore, so
I have no desire to play hardcore either. And now this is the point that I'm trying to make, is that I really like to replay games. Like, this is the reason I replayed Deus Ex, why I replayed Dark Souls. I love to replay games from the very beginning of my character's progression, because now with the knowledge that I have available to me and I know what things are coming up, I can really optimize a build and I can really go through and try different things. Diablo 3, since you can't, suddenly unlock a different skill at level 13, it's already been predetermined what you're unlocking. The variability comes from your loot, and there is a lot of variability with that. But I don't think Blizzard really wants you to replay a level 1 Demon Hunter after you've maxed one. They expect you to move on into their infinite mode, which is Inferno, which is a mode that always keeps challenging and always supplies loot. Whether or not that works, I don't know. I haven't reached the mode yet. We've heard a lot of rumblings about it. I haven't had a chance to try it out myself. But I think it's a novel idea. I don't know if it's going to work, though. And that to me could lose a little bit of the replayability, but at the same time, it's replayability just for the sake of replayability. I wouldn't have been getting anything new out of it.
I mean, one of the issues that we were talking about before the show is that, you have Diablo 3 as this great moment-to-moment gameplay experience where the individual sequence of, I'm fighting this elite enemy and I have to manage where my health orbs are and my potions and, what sorts of skills I have going on. The individual, the 90-second gameplay loop is pretty great. But then once you get past that into the itemization, and I don't know if we want to talk about the auction house right now, but everything that's going on kind of at the metagame level almost is a little bit broken right now. And Blizzard has a really good track record of going back into their games, so I don't think we're going to have to worry about, broken itemization for terribly long. But if they really do want that Inferno mode to continue as this infinite mode progression, then I think we really need, we're going to need some sort of change to come into effect.
I mentioned that in my review too, that a lot of people have voiced concerns, and I am definitely one of them, having played a lot of Diablo 2, is that the way itemization works now is essentially, I have a weapon. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care at all. The only thing I care about is plus stats and the base DPS in that weapon, maybe the attack speed. And it's just, as you go on and on, you have wiggle room, especially in normal, to get those other abilities, but the itemization just isn't as crazy and wacky as Diablo 2 was. Diablo 2, you could find some... Sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, I can't speak to it as compared to Diablo 2. I really enjoyed my build right now is with all of my different items, I made sure to get plus or lifesteal or whatever it is that the stat ends up showing up on your weapon. And so I literally get like 100 health every time I kill or every time I hit something. Like, it's...
See, and now I agree with John, and I see where both of you are coming from on this, and I agree with John in that you can look for those things. You can look for like life leech or things like that, some of the crazier aspects of Diablo 2. But I agree with Steven in that the main stats that you're looking for are damage, like how much it's helping out your damage, and if it's improving like your vitality or a major stat.
Yeah,
but
it's just those particular stats are so powerful that
But But here's where I think it's coming from. It's coming from the fact that they made it so friendly to see how much damage you do that now your focus has shifted over. We're talking about a very metagame aspect here. Because remember, in Diablo 2, you had no real way of seeing how much damage you could really do, except when you went into your like character menu, you saw how much base damage you did, but then you had to do the multiplication and whatnot in your head to see how it would work. They tell you outright how much DPS you have in Diablo 3, and I think that's making it so that that's what we're focusing on is the damage and the vitality.
I did think about that, and I agree to an extent, but you still run into the issue of I'm a wizard. I shouldn't want to carry a big sword around. I should be carrying, a wizard weapon.
Well,
I think in Diablo 2, it was like, okay, I found Frostburns. This is awesome. I get 25% mana. This is great for a wizard. Whereas in Diablo 3, a sword is a sword is a sword. All that matters, the only thing that makes it a wizard weapon is that there's plus int on it. Well, all I care about are the two big numbers.
They did that to really nail a couple of problems from Diablo 2, like the sorceress and necromancer. Like I really didn't care what I was carrying in my offhand, except for the base, like how much mana was it giving me per second, or was it giving me life leech. I didn't care about how much damage it was doing, because all the damage from my skeletons and my minions, that was all handled outside. They've tried to put all the character classes on a balance by making it based on your weapons, and it works for all the character classes, I would argue, except for the wizard and witch doctor. Because like my witch doctor right now is carrying around a giant freaking sword, and it is kind of weird, but it makes it so that way he relates to the other character classes and he's not an outlier.
I mean, it's weird for the monk too, though, because I have like a sword and a shield, and then whenever I go to beat someone up, they literally teleport to my back, and I just punch the dude.
Well, and they said that's because they didn't have the time to put in the weapon animations for each one of the monks.
I mean,
skills.
True, but at the same time, like, why,
why didn't they?
I mean, sure, like the Thousand Fist Strike or whatever it's called would be really awesome with two swords, but at the same time, I feel like there's some. I agree with Steven that there is a disconnect between, like the simple increase of stats and what the items represent as items.
For me, I don't even know what my weapon is right now. Like, I just know that it has 120 DPS and plus 90 int. I literally cannot remember what type of weapon it is.
Well, I think they should let you use the vanishing die on your weapons, so that way, like, because I don't like playing as a monk carrying around two swords. I think it looks kind of weird, and I like the idea of my monk being, Goku from Dragon Ball and just punching people really hard. Dun 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 dun. That's what I want out of my monk, and I would really like it if I could, sort of like how Shepard has the ability to turn off his helmet, and you could do that in Dragon Age as well, so you weren't walking around with a stupid-looking hat as a mage, so you still always looked cool. I kind of wish that they would do that with Diablo 3, like, let me turn the weapons off, so that way I don't see them anymore.
But I mean, like, think about what you're saying right now. Does that not point to itemization being kind of really broke?
Well, but I remember the itemization in Diablo 2, and I didn't care about what. The only thing I cared about was what item was my necromancer carrying around that gave me some Lich Leaf ability.
But I will say two things that contradict each other. That sounds really stupid, and also Diablo kind of works because of it.
Yeah, the thing is, Diablo had its own wacky, weird logic, and that's what the item hunt was in that game, was finding crazy items with ridiculous stats on them, like punch a guy and he teleports 50 feet away and then explodes, or some ridiculous thing like that. And I'm not seeing those things in Diablo 3. I'm just seeing, okay, this makes my skill stronger.
Right, and I think that we need to, by playing more of the game, we might see something happen. I mean, the fan response right now to Inferno mode has been pretty negative, which I find interesting, because everybody who's sitting there complaining that Diablo 3 was too easy, then they get to Inferno, they're like, oh, it's too hard. I'm just like, oh my god, just pick one already. Now, it could be that it's inherently broken, but I think people are just predisposed to complaining about Diablo right now. I don't want to sit here and give off the impression that I am a Diablo defender. I totally see where you guys are coming across. It really pissed me off when I found out that the monk didn't just equip fist weapons. That really bothered me. I was like, why is the monk carrying around a scimitar?
Let me just clarify. It doesn't really piss me off. I'm really liking the game, like, a lot. way too much, more than I have a lot of games in the recent past. And so let's not paint in broad strokes that just because it's goofy that my monk teleports his sword and shield to his back, it's still a really good game.
And to be totally honest, Diablo 2 was goofy, and that's what I liked about it. And I liked that this one has weird crap like that too. Just I'm a wizard. I'm carrying around a two-handed broadsword that gives 500 intelligence. This sword makes me a genius, and I never use it. And I actually have to admit, I kind of laugh because the monk has a few attacks where he doesn't put his weapons on his back. He actually punches with his fists with his sword in his hand. So it's like he's like intentionally he's like lifting his hands up to punch with the part that isn't holding a weapon.
It's all that strength training, You got heavy swords.
He's just awesome like that.
That's why he needs Dex.
I think that the thing that we are kind of pointing out to, and Steven said it when I said that those weapon animations weren't in the game, and he said, well, why aren't they? I think Blizzard kind of got into a bad situation with Diablo 3 where I think they very realistically could have worked on this game for another 8 months, but they kind of said, look, we're going to start sinking money into this project, and how much more are we going to improve it? Let's bring it out.
Yeah.
I think the base game that they've released, and I say base game because Blizzard has already said in their financial reports and in their investor calls and whatnot that the Diablo 3 is going to be a similar platform to StarCraft and Warcraft, where we're going to be seeing expansions. We don't know if they're going to be major updates. We don't really have any idea what they're going to do, but this is not dead. Even in the freaking making of DVD, which I've been watching, they even talk about some story ideas that they could go with. We're going to talk about story in a little bit too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I think they've even said too that they'll be doing content updates. So I have no doubt that there will be stuff to do in the game.
Yeah, and the base game that they've released
is finished
and fun and polished and good. Whereas Diablo 2, which is a game that has been basically put on a pedestal at this point. I mean, Diablo 2 is one of the weirdest games ever released in that when it came out, it got a lot of 8s and, pretty decent review scores. And people were like, yeah, it's good, but it's a lot like Diablo 1 and it's kind of broken. And then Lord of Destruction came out and they patched it. And that's why that game was still playable 12 years later. Diablo 3 has come out and it's infinitely more playable than Diablo 2 was when it first came out. But now, is it going to have the longevity of Diablo 2? Are they going to support it? I don't have an answer for that. I mean,
that's kind of what I was talking about, how I was saying, like the 90-second gameplay loop of find a mob, try to beat the crap out of the mob, and probably do so successfully unless you're playing on Inferno, and then take the loot and move on. That works really well, and they've crafted a very good experience around kind of placing the health orb pop-ups just so that you're almost running out of health, or placing that extra loot drop so that you're thinking, oh man, I could really use a little bit more DPS, and you get that loot drop. And I think that so far they've crafted a very fun and rewarding experience. It's the first game in a very long time where I've said, oh, hey, I just found this plus 30 item, like plus 30 dex item. I'm so excited because, realistically, finding some item in a game shouldn't be that exciting. But for some reason, it really is.
Well, Hey, I got to cut in here. Do you know what breaks that?
What?
Auction house.
Here we go.
Guess who hasn't touched the auction house?
Yeah, I haven't either.
And guess how happy I am.
I agree with John is about to make a point. I just want to make it known that I agree completely with it. It definitely changes the flow of the game.
Yes. So the auction house, and remember, the auction house has an inherent feature in that it is player driven. But in World of Warcraft, it works because you have your limited number of resources. You come through, you have unique items that are specific to certain areas, whatever, and it comes through and you get tiered stuff. Now, over time, that breaks. Like in World of Warcraft, copper is incredibly expensive now, even though it's the lowest tier metal. But there's still equilibrium. Things get priced equally. Well, when we were doing our pregame, we were all playing Diablo, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the auction house. I have 3,000 gold, which is not much at all. I'm going to buy some gear. I bought enough. My character was already pretty well geared. I bought enough. Okay, I'm gonna get the terms wrong. Not unique equipment. What did I buy?
Rares.
I bought enough rares to literally double my DPS, and I still had 500 gold left over.
Yeah, I definitely think that part of that is due just to the fact that the auction house, you find so much stuff that people aren't charging as much for it. And I think also we're running into the game is so new that nobody really has a relative value for this stuff because there's so much of it.
I mean, yet another issue is probably that, it is normal mode. John, just to clarify, is on normal mode right now. And realistically, like now that I've played through the game and kind of seen what normal mode has to offer, you're best off just getting through that as quick as possible. And so, like, I feel like normal mode equipment probably doesn't have that same level of, importance just on a very basic level that would demand so much money.
Well,
but
and they also prevent somewhat from you from getting too overpowered because they do put level caps on equipment. Now, granted, John being able to double his DPS with spending a little bit of gold, that does worry me, but I think that's something that Blizzard has to analyze, and it's something that, hey, maybe they don't want to fix it. Maybe they want to create that community aspect of like, hey, if you're having a really hard time with this game, you're playing on normal right now and you want to get through, you want to experience the title, and maybe you're not, like my fiance Jackie is not going to play Diablo 3 on Nightmare. I don't think she is. She doesn't have any desire to. She wants to play the normal mode.
Wait. She used your Radiant Gems and she's a normal?
Steven, we're going to have a serious conversation about this before we're married. Okay, believe me, I am with you on this.
What?
This is a serious problem right now for our relationship.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, it's fine. But she has no desire to play the game on the higher difficulty levels. So if she is running into problems and she can't find, like if I can't play with her because we're using the same account, she doesn't have her own game, she's using mine, I can't help her out. So if she wants to go onto the auction house and spend a little bit of gold to make herself a little bit stronger, I'm fine with that. But where does that cutoff begin? I don't know. And that, I think John brings up a good point. That could become a problem. If everybody, the desire from all this stuff, from the always online connection, from the auction house, both real money and gold, all of this has been done to protect the player. I mean, I do not believe the grand conspiracy theory that Blizzard is just putting massive DRM in their title.
I agree completely.
Blizzard is trying to protect their player base because there are a lot of gold farmers on Diablo 1 and 2, and the games were inherently broken because of all the rampant cheating. The problem is that if they don't fix the economy of the auction house, then it doesn't matter that people can't make godly plate mail of the whale because they're just going to buy godly plate mail of the whale, and that's a problem.
Which is kind of a concern of mine with the auction house. It's not that I don't like the auction house. It's that in Diablo 2, gold was, Diablo 3 gold is so much more useful. D2 was basically just there so you could waste it on, gambling and repairs.
Yeah.
And in this one, in that game, items were the commodities. Like, oh, I'll trade you, people would trade runes or, certain numbers of gems, or, I'll trade, grandfather for SOJ, and then, scam the guy. I never did that. But that was the thing, is people traded items. And in this game, there is a chat channel for trading items, but I don't see people. Why is someone going to say, I'll trade you this item that's of no use to me when I can put it on the auction house for 8 million gold and it'll sell? Or when I can sell it for real money?
Yeah, during one of the design documents for Diablo 3, it was one of their GDC press conferences, they talked about the hope that they have when you get a piece of equipment. Do you want to trade it with a friend? Do you want to auction it in the auction house? Do you want to auction it for real money or gold? Do you want to break it down for material? They want to give you a wonderful array of things to do. And I think that the availability of that stuff is there, but whether or not it works in the sense of the economy, are they going to go in and maybe get rid of some of the rarer crafting materials so that way you actually do think that, wow, I just picked up this rare item. Do I really want to break it down or do I want to sell it? They're going to have to monitor it, and the problem is that they don't know how the player base is going to respond until you got 6 million people playing the damn game. So yeah, it's going to be inherently broken when it first comes out because just like any new economy, you don't know what the people are going to do with it just yet. You have no idea. So they have to monitor it. And I think it could become something really special. But John's worry, I think it's totally legitimate. I really do. And it could blow Diablo 3 up. But I think that if it became too bad, they would just rip it out.
I mean, that's the thing is like it could blow Diablo 3 up, but then again, you also have the option, and this is something that was talked about when the Real Money Auction House was first announced. You have the option of just not engaging in the auction house,
Right? And I've not engaged.
And I mean, it's a bummer because Blizzard is trying to create a service that exists beyond simple DRM and beyond simple protection for the players. You know, with Battle.net, they've made it easy for me to jump in and out of games with, you know, like Rob and Steven and John, but also friends from home and friends who I haven't seen in 2 years, and, you know, people that I generally wouldn't play games with, but because Diablo is this phenomenon, I'm able to. And it's kind of a bummer that, you know, avoiding the auction house is going to be a solid way to play the game and not ruin the progression for the next, let's say, month or so. You know, they could take them longer or shorter to change it, but you also, you know, that seems like, you know, it's perfectly viable at the time right now. So,
well, and we're also talking about a lot of peripheral stuff right now. We did touch, you know, lightly on the game, and I think the quality of the game is really, really special. I think that they somehow Blizzard came up with that grand equation that most other loot hacks have really struggled with of, I feel a connection with my loot, but just enough of a connection that when I get that new piece of loot, I get really excited for that new thing. And I'm not going, oh, well, that's going to be outclassed in 5 minutes, but I'm also not going, wow, I'm going to be stuck with this for 3 hours. They've really done a great job with that. I think the skill progression in the game is awesome. Granted, that's another aspect of the game that we don't know what's going to happen. Apparently, I've seen somebody take out the end of Act 1 boss on Inferno with a Witch Doctor in 9 seconds with a certain build. And that to me says, okay, they got some balancing to do because, you know, I was telling Steven, I think the Witch Doctor is the easiest class to play as. I had no problems with Nightmare until the very end when they start spamming a ton of enemies at you. I think the Witch Doctor is a little overpowered. But is that something that they're going to change? I mean, some of the runes, I don't see the use in them, but there could be a use in them. That's the kind of stuff that will determine whether or not Diablo 3 is a game that we're going to play 10 years from now. 10 years from now, we could be playing Diablo 3, but it's really hard to keep the content coming and to keep the patches coming. I mean, Diablo 2 is not the same game that it was released back in 2000. It is a completely different game. It was a completely different game a year later. And I'm really excited to see where Blizzard goes. You know, and I'm not already done with the main game. I'm still playing it and really enjoying it, but I'm interested to see what they're going to do.
The bottom line is I think the game is fantastic. The combat is a blast. It's polished. The music is great. The game looks great. Whether or not you think it's too colorful, I don't care because I think it looks awesome. But the longevity is what's in question, and I think people are right to be questioning that because as it is now, the game is fantastic, but in 5 years, will people be touching it? That's very dependent on how they
at the same time, though, the as it is now is 11 days after the games came out.
Exactly.
The game came out. And so we have a little bit more time, I think, before we really need to start, you know, like asking those hardball questions.
And that's the funny part about this game is that this is the only game I think I've ever talked like this. You know, I didn't sit there when Grand Theft Auto 4 came out and go, well, yeah, I'm having fun now, but am I going to have fun 6 months from now? You know, you don't think about that with a lot of games, but Diablo 2, which became such a huge part of our culture and video gaming in general, that's what this game has to do. I mean, remember what they said when they were like, yeah, we're terrified of making Diablo 3. We're absolutely terrified of that. You understand now because we're sitting here 11 days after it comes out and we're already talking about what they're going to do next.
And it sucks because it's not that I'm even close to getting bored. On the contrary, you know, writing my review was a total pain because I kept going to play Diablo. I'm like, oh, I want to check this and make sure I'm getting my facts right. Oh, I played for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think it's great. I think it's a great revival of the franchise. I agree 100% with Steven's review. When that goes up, I think we're going to kind of surprise some people because you would expect us to give the game 110 out of 100. It does have some issues. I think one issue, without getting too spoilerific, I think it's unfortunate that Blizzard continues to write the best lore in the industry, but their actual story writing is bad.
I think here they just said, well, we have expansions, so we don't have to finish the story here. I mean, they finished the story, but there are a lot of things that are left completely unexplored. You get these hints of this really elaborate, complex mythology that barely get scratched the surface of.
Well, and they still have those awesome Blizzard cutscenes. I think the cutscene at the end of Act 3 is drop dead gorgeous and very creepy. I really liked it. But it was like the game ended, and even though the final act, it takes place in a really cool area and it's a really gorgeous environment, you finish it and you're like, that was it?
You're like, I want more.
Really?
Which
and I think
is good.
That's the other problem with Diablo is that there are no set piece moments in this game. There are no, Kratos versus, a Titan. There's none of that. It's really the 90 seconds of fun over and over and over again. So
I think the boss fights are significantly improved over Diablo 2.
Oh, God, yes.
Those are definitely set piece moments. I mean, I guess you can't spoil them, but there's one boss fight where you're fighting and then you're sitting there going, this is way too easy. I win. This is lame. And then all of a sudden it's like, LOL, no.
That was without saying what boss that was my favorite boss because it was hilarious.
That was tied for my favorite boss with the final boss because the final boss was just like, oh, you like Diablo 2? Here you go.
Yeah, and it was a good version of the Diablo 2 fight, which, that fighting Diablo in Diablo 2 as a level 30 necromancer was practically impossible. I just had to keep dying and keep doing a little
watching him hit your skeletons and just instantly kill them.
Yeah, I mean, and they've done a really good job of that. I think one thing, and I brought it up on the pre-show warm-up, and it's an interesting aspect of Diablo 3, is that because of what they did with the single-player campaign of StarCraft 2 and how different and unique and always changing that game was, I do think Diablo 3 looks a little underwhelming in comparison. Not saying that it's a bad game. I enjoyed Diablo 3 more than StarCraft 2, but I think StarCraft 2 single-player was so much more daring and tried to do so many different things that Diablo 3 doesn't do that, and by comparison, it looks a little bit shoddier because of that. It's just an interesting, I was waiting for that, StarCraft 2 moment of holy crap, that's a really good idea, and it never really came.
Yeah.
Are you talking plot-wise or?
Well, not just plot-wise. I mean, that's not the main point, but just the way that every single mission in StarCraft 2 was different.
Yeah, you have unique things to do. Whereas I think my issue with Diablo as I think Diablo is fun, but unlike these guys who are playing 8 hours at a time, I find myself struggling to play more than 20 or 30 minutes because for me it's just okay, I want to click a lot, and then I'm going to click a lot some more, and then I'm going to click a lot some again.
But I do
and then I'm going to click a lot.
There's a lot of clicking.
But I think you like the game, though, John. I think you do like it, but even though it's not your cup of tea.
Yeah, I mean, and to be completely fair, really the only kind of loot game that has been, I'm I really like this is Phantasy Star Portable.
Oh, yeah. That was a great one.
But, yeah, no, you're right that it's not my style of game, even though I buy Torchlight and I bought Titan Quest and I bought all these kinds of games. Because they're good for playing in short spurts, but they're not the kinds of games that I can sit down and, okay, I'm going to play this for any length of time.
See, and I find it so relaxing. It's just a, relax, enjoy the end of the day, play Diablo. You get better, you get more stuff. I mean, they just do a really good job of drip feeding you fun.
The feedback loop is brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, on a very basic level, it's just, hey, I'm going to wipe out this crowd of enemies and then get some more points, in whatever stat. And then I'm going to be able to wipe out another larger crowd of enemies and get even more stat points, which if you on a very reductional level, reductional is not a word, reductionist.
Reducing it to its simplest element.
Yes, there you go.
That's not a word.
It's almost kind of terrifying that we are so into that but hey, it's Diablo and it has a special place.
Rob, you are so totally caught.
Hey, wait, you better not be playing.
I saw John come online and I was like, oh crap. Have I not been cogent?
No, I just had to check to see which one of you, because I knew that one of you at least was cheating and playing while we were talking.
Oh, you can't be mad at me.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, he can.
I
Check
do
out my power.
I do think that we should take Zach's suggestion and start transitioning to news.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So, do we want to start off with the really sad news?
No, let's start off with the
Oh.
frivolous silliness.
Okay, so silliness first.
let's
Demon
do-
Souls servers still staying on.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Woohoo!
I don't think we actually wrote a story on that yet.
It's not up yet. Atlas announced in their newsletter that they're going to have they're just going to continue the servers. They didn't say for how long, and they didn't say really why. But
Wow.
there was I think their like VP of marketing or something. I'm about to pull up here we go. The quote from
Probably Iran.
their VP of sales and marketing, Tim Pivanicki, was, while it originally seemed as though it would be unfeasible for us to continue to sustain the servers, a number of developments have made it possible for us to continue to invest in and support our fans as they have continued to invest in and support us in Demon Souls. For all the gamers who have yet to discover and experience the game's online experience, blah, blah, blah. Basically, servers are going to continue for a while. And I don't know what has made it possible. They haven't said what has made it possible. But basically, if you want to continue playing some Demon Souls, then play some Demon Souls. I actually was bummed that I forgot to actually play Demon Souls when it was still up. So I'm excited to be able to get a little bit more of that in. But
Yay.
More news. Mass Effect multiplayer DLC is coming out.
You just play as a fortune now.
Yeah, and there's like sweet laser whips or something.
Are those the really nasty alien-looking ones? I don't mean to be racist there, but they're just
They're the
really
ones with
nasty.
the giant fangy teeth.
Oh yeah.
But there's going to be some new characters, some new maps, some new weapons. There's also, I think, there's like some new objectives. And then Steven, were you talking about how there's now it's Banshees or something?
Well, it's a weekend thing. So I think it's every other weekend they do an objective where it's like, you need to kill. I think it was kill 1 million Banshees across multiplayer.
Yeah,
and they didn't do it. I think it was the first one where the community didn't succeed at the goal. And so the repercussion was during the next objective weekend, which is this weekend as we're recording this, Banshees spawn no matter what enemy you're fighting.
Which is
That's
kind of awesome and chaotic too. Like, that's exciting. Like, I'm really happy with how they're supporting that. Like you were saying, Zach, the DLC is adding those new maps and the new characters and the new weapons. But what's really cool is they're adding a new objective type, and that's like, it's pretty significant in the space of that game because we've been doing the same, I think, 3 or 4 objectives since the game came out. So go ahead.
It's free. Like that's the great thing is people
I forgot to mention. This is free
people
DLC.
like to harp on EA because they're EA is trying to steal our money. Blah, blah, blah. They stole our gerbs, but
They took our gems.
That was special,
but
guys. Thank
they're providing a significant amount of DLC for free, considering that you look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and essentially they're saying shell out $50 so you can get all the DLC. And EA is saying with Mass Effect, well, here's the deal: we're going to create cool stuff for the multiplayer, and it's yours.
Yeah, no.
Not only that, Extended Cut is going to be free too. So I mean, we have nothing in sight in terms of paid DLC for that game.
I'm sure that there will be paid DLC.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's coming. But I think it's great. I think it's a good turnabout for EA, giving people something for the game and keeping people interested in it. It's kind of the CD Projekt way of doing things, so I'm okay with that.
Goodness knows they need good publicity for that game because it's impossible to talk about it without some bad game like, oh my god, the ending is the worst thing since Nazis.
Oh my God.
Oh, goodness.
Dude, that's
more
the
news.
degree of,
Hey guys, more news.
That's how bad it gets on the internet.
So East Origin is coming out next week, and it's coming off of the release of Oath and Fulgana came out, right? On Steam, and so we're looking at $15 ish, maybe. That's what Oath of Fulgana looks like. So
I think it's going to be $19.99 for Origin.
Really? Oh, okay. So on Origin.
No. E's origin is going
okay.
to 1999.
Okie dokie. Yeah.
Scared,
So
Zach.
yeah, I was.
Yeah. No,
I can't support the
I think
EA
it's
stuff.
because Felgun has already been released, and that was the price point of the PSP title. Right now it's $14.99.
Right. Okay.
Whereas Origin is for North American audiences a brand new title.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, so coming out May 31st. So that should be, I guess, by the time you hear this, you'll be real close. And keep an eye on that. We have, as we mentioned before, Diablo 3 broke some sales records. The actual numbers are 4.7 million at the end of day one and 6.3 million at the end of the first week.
In other words, the people at Blizzard who are already swimming in pools of money are now drowning in pools of money.
Quite a great many pool of money or something.
For them, Diablo 3 is the mob they've killed with loot popping out of it.
Oh, you know what? One thing that I wish that I had done that I joked about having done is recording the number of clicks in a Diablo session.
God, you don't want to do that.
Like, how many times do you click your mouse compared to like average when you're web surfing, when you're playing another game? But
Oh, but it's so satisfying. Yeah, I mean, they've sold so many copies of this game. I mean, I wasn't sure how well it was going to sell. I thought it was going to do well, but that is monstrous. Is that better than StarCraft 2? I mean, I know it's a record.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, considering that it's the best-selling PC game of all time or whatever.
Well, the fastest selling.
Fastest selling.
Fastest selling is still like The Sims.
Oh, yeah, probably. But
there's like 50 of those.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, more news. I'll breeze through the next couple. We have Borderlands 2 getting a couple of limited editions.
Cool.
The Rob might find interesting the Ultimate Loot Chest edition, so he can put his cat with those damn bells in it. And so that's 149, and you get a replica chest with like an art book and cloth maps, stickers, all these crazy things.
Do I get a cat helmet?
No, you get a little cat container storage chest thing.
Okay.
I don't know. I saw someone on Twitter posted a picture of a cat in the in that special edition bonus. So
wait, this is Borderlands, right?
Borderlands, yeah.
Okay, so unless it comes with a claptrap, irrelevant.
Hey, maybe there is. I haven't. I know there's a bobblehead of some sort. There's a Marcus bobblehead, authentic Marcus bobblehead. I don't know if authentic Marcus is a thing or if they're just talking about the authenticity of the bobblehead.
Though, can a collector's edition really come with something that's inauthentic?
I think that would be hilarious.
I think it'll be really interesting. It'll be interesting to see how these loot games do after Diablo 3. Like, I was being really facetious and talking about Torchlight 2 and how that was going to do after Diablo 3, but maybe the backlash will have caused these games to get a little bit more attention. So maybe, Torchlight 2 will do something. Maybe Borderlands will too. I might be wrong. I thought Diablo 3 was going to be the only loot hack you need, but I could be wrong there.
Guys, I thought of something inauthentic, which was the box art for Okami on Wii.
Oh, snap.
That was the beginning of Capcom's box woes, and they continue to screw that up.
Capcom.
Revelations.
On the topic we were mentioning, I definitely think you're mistaken there, Rob. There are a lot of people interested in Torchlight 2 who just didn't care about Diablo 3's direction, or for whatever reason they were just more into that, and I don't think that game will have any problem finding a very large base. The problem is I think it's open multiplayer, kind of like Diablo 1 had, and so I can say unless they have some sort of closed server for that, everyone can enjoy having their characters hacked into oblivion within 10 minutes.
Well, that was the thing about Borderlands that I didn't understand, and everybody's sitting here complaining about the online and trying to protect characters for Diablo 3. And, we can have a conversation about that, but, like, my buddies were going into the code of Borderlands and making characters and giving themselves weapons. Like,
I mean, that's because the saves weren't protected at all.
Exactly.
Well, and with the main thing that I see with Diablo is honestly the auction house. Is they're trying to prevent issues with the auction house to make that relevant. Because if you take away that protection, the auction house doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because everything becomes one gold. because you're just like, oh, I can sell whatever because I can make it.
Exactly, and that's the whole. I mean, and I think they've been transparent about that. They said, we don't want this because we have this.
Exactly. So
More news?
I just don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting. Yes,
More news.
More news. South Park, the game, delayed to Q1 2013.
Shocker.
Yeah, I don't know.
THQ's kind of in dire straits right now.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I forgot that they were publishing that, but
I just hope it's not canceled.
that would be a real bummer because I'm hoping that it's good.
I don't think they're going to cancel it. I mean, even if it's slated for Q1 at this point, it's got a pretty significant amount of its development done.
I mean, the only thing that I'm now worried about is that there's so many games that are being pushed to Q1 2013, and it's looking like a really good quarter for games. But, if South Park somehow isn't able to rely on the South Park brand, then that might be a bummer for Obsidian.
Well, what else?
I really hope good things happen for Obsidian because they've had some rough times recently.
Well, what all has been pushed? I know BioShock's been pushed.
BioShock.
Tomb Raider
just got pushed. Something else big just got pushed recently that I can't remember off the top of my head. But
Darksiders is now like August.
Maybe. I think someone was speculating that Grand Theft Auto 5 was going to come out Q1 2013.
Grand Theft Auto 5 is May. I don't know why we're having these conversations.
Is it?
It's May. That is Rockstar's release schedule now.
It's on their financials for this year.
Does that include May?
No. Fiscal ends in April, right?
I think for 2K it ends in April. Yeah.
But anyways, CD Projekt has an announcement coming up it could be for their new RPG in a brand new setting, air quotes.
Yes, which we think is going to be modern or near future because the symbol that they're using to hire people is a gun. It looks like a 9mm, like a modern gun, not a revolver or anything.
Pizza with 9mm bullets on it.
CD, can't you guys just make more Witcher?
And they are.
Yeah, that's true. I think they're getting a lot more people. So
yeah, I'm excited. I still have yet to play Witcher 2. That and something else that I can't remember are two really big games that I'm intending to play this summer before I
Dark Souls.
Maybe.
It's good.
I played Dark Souls already.
You
But
beat it though.
You didn't love it enough.
I did not love it enough.
But honestly, by the time that you actually listen to this podcast, you'll know what it is that CD Projekt has announced. We don't, because we can't. Yeah. We don't know the future. So honestly, if you could send me an email and let me know what happens, but send it to me now, that would be appreciated.
I just got really confused.
Yep.
Time travel, man. Time travel.
Okay.
Xseed is going to be localizing Ragnarok Odyssey for the Vita. It's going to be sometime 2012. I'm just the rest of these so we can get to the big story. Grand Knight's History localization is canceled.
Not yet.
Because I was kind of looking forward to that. And then we have Persona 4 The Golden coming to North America, which was announced a while ago, but it was like right after we recorded the last podcast. So, just wanted to get that in there. So Vita remake, and then sad news. This day.
Goodness.
Fair gamers.
Yeah.
Following a whole bunch of financial woes, 38 Studios and Big Huge Games have laid off their entire staff, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's gone.
That's a real problem. So these are the people who brought you more recently Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, that have in the past brought you Supreme Commander and a couple of other big.
Gas powered was Supreme Commander.
It's that.
Rise of Legends, Rise of Nations,
and then they did one of the Age of Empires 3 expansions.
Yeah. And in the future they were hoping to bring you Codename Copernicus, their Amalur MMO, but it's looking less and less like that's.
It's gone. It's gone.
Is that gone? All right. So
it's Homer going. It's just a little dirty. It's still good. It's still good.
Yeah. From what I read of the financials there's so much in the hole that there's that game is toast.
Here's my speculation on the topic is that Amalur, if you take Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning as a self-contained unit, that game was probably profitable. But you take the Copernicus MMO, which they were working on before they even purchased.
That was like a good 5 years, right?
Yeah, before they purchased Big Huge Games. I think that became a development money pit. Because and this may have been top down. Kurt Schilling is a huge gamer. He probably wanted to make his perfect game. And there's no such thing as a perfect game. It's if you keep saying I want this option and this option and this option and this option and this option, you're going to run out of money before your game comes out. And I honestly think that was the case here.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the bummer is that if you go into a couple of the different press conferences that happened after all of these issues coming up with the loans that Rhode Island gave 38 Studios, you'll find that, like John said, there's this discrepancy between how Reckoning did and what Rhode Island thought the game was going to do, or I guess more specifically, Chafee, who is Lincoln Chafee, who's the governor of Rhode Island. There's all these different people who think different things as different levels of success.
Yeah. Well, the Rhode Island governor said the game needed to sell 3 million to be profitable, and I find that mind-boggling, and I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
I think that total would include what would be required to fund Copernicus, considering a 0 sales from Copernicus.
Yeah.
There's no way.
In addition to that, you also have the issue where there was apparently some sort of disconnect between what Rhode Island was saying in regards to the firing of the whole staff and what 38 Studios is doing, and so there's still apparently an opportunity, or was an opportunity, for some other publisher or some other investor to come in and pick up these properties and keep the staff going. But I guess at this point it's looking less and less likely that that's actually going to happen.
What I think is going to... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to mention, I thought I read too that I guess after they all got fired, they also got notified by the company that people who had relocated to Rhode Island and sold houses in Massachusetts actually didn't have those houses sold. So banks were contacting these employees going, yo, why aren't you paying your mortgage?
Yeah, which seemed I think that honestly there was gross mismanagement going on the 38 Studios side. A lot of people are blaming Kurt Schilling, and I don't think that that's necessarily where the blame lies in regards to that sort of mismanagement. I can't imagine him going, "Oh yes, let's lie to our employees and do something else."
Yeah,
but I do think that there was mismanagement going on, and you know what? It's certainly possible. You know what? I having met Kurt Schilling at an SOE event years ago, he's a very nice guy, but I can't tell you what his business acumen is.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well have been that he was really passionate and excited about it, but just didn't. He was dewy-eyed optimism.
Yeah, or he says, okay, I'm gonna give, this is the board, and their officers just completely effed things up. That's a possibility. We don't know yet. It's still
we're
really
not gonna
early.
We're not gonna know for a long time, I don't think.
Yeah,
but it's just so sad.
It is.
Because that was a solid game.
I think the property is going to live on. We talked about this actually at great length before the show. I think that what's going to happen is that some existing publisher, and my guess is EA, is actually going to buy this franchise because 1.2 million copies is pretty successful.
For a brand new IP? Yeah,
and the game was pretty well received. I thought it was fantastic, and there weren't really many people saying this is a terrible game. There were a lot of great ideas in that game. Yeah,
I think what's going to happen is EA, as the partner publisher for the title, is going to say, okay, this was a profitable title for us. It met our expectations. We believe that we can make future titles within this scene. We've got BioWare Montreal. We've got these ancillary studios that are used to working on RPGs. Let's hand this property to one of them, along with this pre-existing engine, be it they may or may not buy the engine. You look at the Fallout purchase from Bethesda. They purchased the license, not the engine. But whatever, I think that Amalur, in regards to being a franchise, is not dead.
I hope not.
Now, Big Huge Games, they're dead. 38 Studios is dead. And while it's sad with Big Huge Games, and I really don't like seeing people screwed over, had 38 Studios not stepped in, Big Huge Games would have ceased existing in 2009.
Yeah, and that was a good point that you brought up in the pre-show warm-up, is that those guys were already in financial trouble. They were working on an RPG that became Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. They picked up the Amalur license from 38 Studios, so, I mean, they kept them going.
38 literally bought Big Huge Games from THQ
Right.
when THQ was like, yeah, we don't have anything for you guys to do.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a down note to end over.
Yeah, it just sucks to hear that many people got screwed,
Well,
passionate people.
Well, one thing that was really positive is on Twitter the day everything came about, 38 jobs was trending. It's clear other studios are hiring. So, unfortunately in the games industry, things are very, very fluid in that a studio can exist one day and not exist the next, but 3 other studios spring out of the ashes. And, my brother's been laid off I don't know how many times, but he always finds another job because there's always work in the games industry.
I was going to say, did he work on SOCOM 3? Because he should have been laid off for that.
No, he worked on the original SOCOM.
Okay, that was a damn good game, so he did not deserve that one.
Well, he got laid off several years later after that. But my brother works on network code, so really if you say this game is bad, you really can't blame my brother unless there's significant issues with the technical aspects of the online game or of the online. So if there are, feel free to blame him.
And meanwhile, if you think that our podcast is bad, see what I did there?
Blame Rob. It's all his fault.
Yeah, I mean, Rob is technically the showrunner. Rob is our Bill Lawrence. So
wait a minute here. No, I was gonna say, we like to hear if you guys think we're doing a good or bad job. John, do we have time for maybe some viewer mail?
It would have been nice had you told me that, I don't know, any time before the show so I could actually pull up the box.
Wow, it takes you so long to do that right now.
Dude, how often do you log in?
More mail for next time.
How often do you log into the 1-in-1 mailer? All right, that thing is a pain.
I keep that thing logged in all the time because I never know when they're going to give me Guild Wars 2 information, and I get excited.
I get my email on my phone, but I don't get the podcast email to my phone.
See, right now I'm saving.
Oh man, we got a great mail. I love this one. Invitation to Brain Conference.
Oh, I forgot. Okay, give us a real question.
Let me see this one. As we have our friend Alexander, who has a very, very long rant on Diablo, but I don't see any questions here.
He says that it's awesome.
Yeah.
He's glad that Rob likes Guild Wars 2 since he doesn't really like MMOs.
I like it too.
No. Not a raging fanboy. Servers are unstable, just beating the game. Diablo 3 is not a bad game. The rune system is somewhat fun. I don't see an actual question here.
Okay.
Hey, I have a question. Rob, from your experience so far, Diablo or Guild Wars?
It's actually a harder question than you might think. Guild Wars, I really did enjoy that free weekend, but there were the beginnings of kind of a little bit of a
horrible balance.
There was a little bit of a balance to it, and I was getting a little. I was looking for the balance in the game, and it was clear that it wasn't complete yet at that point. I'm still excited for Guild Wars 2, but I think it's going to take a lot to really beat Diablo. But they're 2 very different games, so I don't know. I think I'm going to like them both. But which one am I going to be playing a year from now? I really don't know. I
suppose we will find out soon enough.
Okay, I have a legit reader question.
Yay.
Hey, Random Encounter crew, I have a question if you guys have time to answer it. Are there any classic games you would like to see re-released on PSN, Virtual Console, etc. that haven't been already?
Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts Covenant, please.
I was going to say Nocturne so it doesn't look like ass on my HD TV. Ugh.
The Shadow Hearts thing is interesting, considering that it's going to look like ass on your TV anyway, Rob.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts 2 is that they were Midway properties, which obviously Midway doesn't exist anymore. And I don't know if anyone actually snagged those licenses during liquidation.
Yeah, I remember Bettenhausen was saying something about that on like an old One Up Yours podcast I was listening to like a couple weeks ago, that nobody knows what happened to those licenses. They're like out and about. Maybe Blizzard has them. Turn Shadow Hearts into a loot hack.
You know what else I would like to see released on PSN, and I know John will be behind this, and it's impossible, but Phantom Dust.
Yes,
cool.
but well, that can theoretically be released on Xbox Live.
I'd be okay with that.
See, now why do you guys think that the upscaler on the PS3 really did make PS2 games look better?
Well, yeah, theoretically having a PSN
Better, but
release.
not great.
Like, not great. Like, they didn't suddenly look HD quality, but like, I'm playing, because I have a new PlayStation 3, I'm playing Nocturne on my HD TV, and that just looks terrible. It looks so bad.
Bummer, dude. Should have played it in 2004 or whenever it came out.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to episode 45 of Random Encounter. As always, make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or through the RSS feed. Keep giving us questions so I can spring them on John and make him feel awkward as he tries to search for questions in long email threads.
Podcast at rpgfan.com. So we're going to have an interview with some folks from Atlas about Gungnir right after this. We're going to go over the same stuff that I really couldn't explain at the beginning of the podcast. Hopefully they explain it better than I did. And so, yeah, if you're interested in Sting's new title, you should probably give that one a listen.
Yep. So before we head out, I was thinking we should each make a wonderful E3 prediction.
I will be very, very, very busy.
Come on, say something controversial.
Let's see.
I got mine. No Final Fantasy Versus 13. Ha.
That's
Wow.
not controversial.
You're really calling the future there, aren't you?
Yep.
I think that some company that we really aren't going to expect is going to announce a major RPG franchise.
Do you know anything?
No, actually, this is nothing that I actually know. So I know some things that I can't talk about, but that prediction is not those things.
All right. Steven?
I think at some point Versus 13 is going to be retitled Type 1.
I think it's going to end up being retitled Final Fantasy 15. Oh, did you guys see that report? There might be a Final Fantasy 12, this be 12-3 or...
No. So that's... Well, no, 12 didn't have a sequel, but that rumor is like that the project that Grin was working on is being moved around to a different developer, and it's garbage, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting.
My prediction is
Persona 5.
Deus Ex. No, I like doing the Persona 5 prediction, but I would not mind seeing rumblings of a new Deus Ex.
Oh, I think we'll see Thief before Deus Ex.
Oh, right. Is it the same developer?
Yeah.
It is. Okay, so then I was really... I haven't been super up on my RPGs, so it's cool. Let's end this bad boy.
All right. Well, once again, thank you for listening to the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us as always. Give us reviews, give us comments and questions, and we will get back to you. All right, let's get back to Diablo.
Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. This is your co-host, John McCarroll. Unfortunately, Rob is not here today, but I do have two very special guests. I have Richard Rodriguez, who is the QA lead at Atlas on Gungnir.
Hi there.
And I have a man that you met a couple of months ago, Aram Jabari, who is the PR manager at Atlas.
Hello.
And as you may have guessed, seeing that Richard is the QA lead on Gungnir, we're going to talk about Gungnir, which new title from Atlas and Sting being the developers of Knights of the Nightmare, Yggdra Union, Hexus Force, and all these other very complicated RPGs that many of you know and love. So Richard or Aram, whichever one of you wants to start, can you give us a brief kind of overview of, if you want to, even Department Heaven as a whole, and then how Gungnir fits in?
Well, in terms of the Department Heaven series, like if you're familiar with it, like a lot of the games, they don't really kind of continue from one to the other. There's no like real connections between them aside from maybe like a character here and there and like the mythology there. So it really just kind of sits in its own little area within the series overall. mean, the biggest connection to other games would be seeing some characters like Pamela the Witch is there, and like the Norse mythology is like definitely heavily in this game, like with some of the other ones as well. As for this game itself, it's mainly just about like this kind of conflict going on in this nation where there's like this race of people called the Leonikins that are being oppressed by the noble race of the Daltons. And the whole story is basically like you just kind of getting your ragtag group, like creating resistance, like making your way across the nation to kind of oust this like oppressive government that's going on.
For anyone who's unfamiliar with Sting's games, there was a really cool write-up I just saw by Kat Bailey on Joystick. I hope it's okay for you,
Yeah,
John, for me to
yeah.
stop that. But she went into detail about the Depth Heaven series and just Sting's philosophy in general. And for anyone who's unfamiliar, basically, I think the first one that came out in North America would have been Riviera, the Promised Land, which was, for the most part, I guess you could say it was more of a straightforward RPG than Ig Reunion and the Nightmare, in that it was not a strategy RPG. But it was unique in that it kind of depended heavily on the items. The items were very core in item management, weapon management, durability. And then for the next game, Ig Reunion, it was this very interesting mix of like real time and turn-based strategy RPG elements. Nights in the Nightmare was this amazingly weird mix of strategy RPG and bullet hell action. So one of the things that the constant for Sting is that there seems to be no consistency or constancy between genre for game to game within the same universe, and it's very bold game making. It's very sometimes I think maybe from one game to the other in the same series they maybe lose a fan just because like they go from a traditional RPG to something that's totally crazy. But I think anyone who gives the games time and dives into them finds some of the most nuanced, layered, intricate, complex, and rewarding games. Even Hexy's Force, which was probably the most straightforward RPG of their entire universe.
That was actually not.
That was not Depth Heaven. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So with Gungnir, on a scale from Hexus Force to Nights in the Nightmare, where is it on the crazy scale?
I actually put it like in the lower half of the scale. Sure. Like it's pretty straightforward SRPG. There's just like a lot of little nuances here and there. It's definitely not like Nights where it's like its own genre entirely, or even Yggdra. I'd say it's basically around like where Riviera is, like in terms of how far off it is from the natural RPG. Much RPG in this case.
Much closer to Luminous Arc, Final Fantasy Tactics, and the kind of the tried and true Disgaea, the pillars of the genre, as opposed to something more experimental, I think, like Nights in the Nightmare.
Well, it's interesting that you draw a comparison to Disgaea. I've only had a chance to play a few hours of the game, but it seems very interesting that things in Gungnir are very focused about time, whereas Disgaea, you could move your characters around almost indefinitely. It seems like Gungnir is very controlled. You get one turn every now and again. You can move one character, but then you can interrupt. You can speed things up. You can move your turns around. And can you go into detail about this time system for our listeners? I just find it very intriguing.
Oh, yeah, well, it's kind of like how you said, where like they put a lot of control or restrictions on like what you can do, but at the same time, it's very open because on the one hand, yeah, you can only control one character when it's your party's turn to act. However, you can control like any character you want. You can keep controlling the same guy over and over during your turn, and only switch over to those support characters like when it's useful.
And that structure plays into the context of the story, right? I mean, there's like you said, this ragtag group comes together. They don't have an indefinite amount of time.
You could look at it like that, just in terms of like their kind of low level approach to it. More kind of makeshift
guerrilla.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to ask a follow up question, but if you have more to say, I will let you finish.
Oh no, I was going to kind of clarify, but no, go ahead.
Now, so in regards to being able to control one character over and over again. One thing that I've seen happen in many strategy RPGs, specifically Fire Emblem, is you really focus on one character and then you kind of get screwed over. Do you think that I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I haven't gotten to the point where I can only use one character. I have to heal. I have other support stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I think, honestly, you have to move around with the beat system. So I just answered my own question. So why don't you talk about the beat system?
Oh, well, first let me just clarify, when I was saying, controlling more than one or using the same character more than once, I guess I was kind of exaggerating where you're not going to always use the same character over and over, but, when that time comes where you really want to use them, twice in a row, you have that option. And even in terms of using the same character, they have their own wait time meter, which will increase and if you want to keep using them, like they'll start their max HP will actually start dropping. So there are definitely like things in place that kind of force you to move around and use the other characters as well. But like you said, the beat system, yeah, it's definitely one of the better like systems within the game where you use all your party members to attack buff like anywhere from 2 to 3 or 4 characters all at once. And it's really where a lot of the strategy in the game is in terms of like, controlling the battlefield, like placing your units in the right spots before you wait to like take the time to attack. It can be the difference between like 100 damage attack versus a 500 damage one.
And risk reward is like a very long running theme in Sting games. I remember Hexies had a system that was based almost entirely on risk reward and how you would allocate your points for your special abilities in battle.
No, yeah, that's a very good point. Like I know a lot of times, like I wouldn't use the beat system just as like, oh no, I gotta attack this guy like right now when I have a chance. But it's like if you use that forethought, I'm like, no, if I move him here, wait to attack, get my other guy here, those 2 attacks will end up being more than what 2 separate attacks would have been on its own.
It seems like it works almost like the link system from Front Mission 5, which is a game that I'm still incredibly bitter about its lack of localization. But yeah, it seems like you almost, if you're more patient right up until the point where you can't be patient anymore, it pays off the most, which as opposed to, I playing Tactics Ogre, last month, where I just, okay, let's go grinding, and then I really don't have to use any strategy whatsoever. And, I'm digging on the game so far. Also, one system that I'm kind of unclear on is you have all your story characters, and then you have characters that you can recruit. They just say, oh, they show up in camp. Would you like to hire these people? Can you go into a little bit of detail about the mercenary system where you can hire people? I haven't really gotten in depth with that, and I'm not sure I understand it.
Oh, basically, like you mentioned, there's the camp, and then there's also the guild. And the difference between the two is the camp, you only occasionally have like a camp area in between battles where you'll get new recruits that'll like automatically volunteer. But for the most part, you're going to get all your recruits from the guild. And the way the guild works is that you can offer up an amount of money, just like anywhere from like 1 to 100,000 gold. And basically, like how much you offer, and like depending on what time of the story it is, that'll determine like what mercenaries you'll attract. So it's something like, I got 50 grand. Who's going to like work for me for that much money? And then from there, you'll get a set of 3 guys that you can check their stats and see which one works the best. Meanwhile, if you're looking for a particular type of unit, like let's say the wizards, which only use like a certain weapon, then you would offer like that certain weapon along with your money, and that way you're guaranteed to only get mercenaries that only use that type of weapon. And even then, you'll always have a choice of 3. And of course, one of the drawbacks of the system is you can't just keep on offering money and think, oh no, I don't like those guys, take it back, offer some more money. Because if you just reject all the recruits, they take like 10% transaction fee no matter what, and you end up losing that gold.
Okay. That's interesting. Like, I don't know. It seems that the systems really mesh well in this game. I mean, it's even sometimes on accident, I'll have my character set up where, it's beat and boost. And one thing I'm really bad at reading tutorials. So this is why I'm asking a lot of questions. So it's like, oh, this is a tutorial, hit buttons. And it's really not something that you can do in a Sting game. But can you talk to me about like finding the bases on the map? I know that contributes the amount of tactics that you have, but I'm not sure 100% how.
Yeah, well that's true. Well, basically every base you get will increase your maximum amount of tactic points by 2. So you start off, you can only get a max of 10, but if you take over the whole map, you get as much as 20. And the reason you want to increase tactic points, or how you increase the actual tactic points themselves, is basically just by moving along the map. So if you're like just sitting in the same spot attacking an enemy and like not actually moving around or just trying to like exploit the same area, you're not going to get a lot of tactics points. But for every step to a new square that you guys take, that'll increase it. In terms of actually using the points, first there's the obvious stuff like the beat tactics, which it requires a certain amount, boost tactics, those require a certain amount. Same thing with like scramble as well. But then there's also like more minor stuff, such as there's weapons that have a base damage value, and then they have a base like tactical damage value. And weapons that have a tactical damage value will increase, their damage will increase with your tactics. And it gets to the point where like the character's attack might do as much as like triple damage if you have a lot of tactic points. So that's something that's definitely like worth keeping an eye on and going for over the course of the battle.
Okay. So, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, John, I wanted to say you mentioned a couple times about how there's a lot of balance to how all these different tactical elements that are in the game, and I wanted to reiterate for anyone who has never really played a Sting game, there is this consistent thread of the more you invest in a Sting game, whether it's an RPG or a strategy RPG or one of the kind of bizarre amalgams that just works of both. The more you invest, the more you get out of it. It's a very the games are rewarding the deeper you go, and some people I think are overwhelmed by the number of menus and so much text, so many statistics. But the thing that I think the takeaway is for anyone who's just looking for a strategy RPG, they'll find a lot to like with Gungnir. It has a lot of the same. You have to manage where your units are on the battlefield, and you have to basically be smart about your tactics for the most part. But there is a lot of these systems and elements that you can dive into. And I'm not saying they're all fully elective and optional. I think the game is rather hard if you don't know how to properly use things like the beat system. But if you really want to dive into it, just to the bottom of the pool, you'll find the game is willing to reward you for every step down you go. So for anyone who's kind of never played a Sting game and wondering, Gungnir, like all the other games in their lineup or their library, is willing to meet you every step of the way.
And I found Gungnir to be a little bit more friendly than both Knights of the Nightmare and Yggdra Union, which is a positive for me. I mean, they don't lack the depth that the other games have, but they're certainly more friendly to newcomers or people who don't, or at least thus far, who don't want to dive, and min max after every battle, which is certainly a positive.
There's definitely a lot more like familiar like game mechanics.
Yeah.
Versus the other ones you mentioned.
So Gungnir is a PSP title, and I wanted to hear, since Atlas does a lot of localization of Japanese titles, what do you guys think about the current market? It seems like every other news story that we're publishing from Japan is a new game on the PSP, but the platform's all but dead here in North America. How do you think that what are your thoughts on kind of the PSP market as it stands right now?
Well, I think you're right to identify it as more vibrant or more healthy in Japan. I think that just from an objective standpoint, when you look at the numbers, and Monster Hunter, I think, was this tremendous beast in Japan in terms of moving PSP systems. We don't view the PSP as we look at it as a very viable platform for our fans. We've had a lot of great titles under our brand come out on PSP. We know a lot of our fans have a PSP, or maybe they've upgraded and they have the PlayStation Vita, but with the Vita they still have the ability to purchase Gungnir or the game that comes out the month after that, Growlance or Wayfarer of Time, which they're both really in the same genre, the same target player. And so I think the reality of the Japanese game market is that as there is handhelds are huge in Japan. I think from a development standpoint, there's some element where it's you can be a little faster and a little lighter on your feet when you're developing for handheld. But also, I think handheld just as a play style is super popular. And when I was in Tokyo a year and a half ago, everyone is far more comfortable busting out a PSP or 3DS or Vita just in public. They didn't have a Vita back then, obviously, but like in the subways and those games are coming out in Japan, and a lot of people ask us about our direction as a publisher, and they think that, Atlas is going all Western RPG, and Atlas is abandoning Japanese RPGs. And it's not really the case, although it keeps coming up. It's just a matter of what games are available for us to bring out that fall into that tradition of ours. And Gungnir, Growlancer fall into that 100%. Yes, the PSP is not the same system in terms of maybe trajectory today as it was 2 years ago, but we believe in the user base, the install base. We believe in there being this fan base that's still excited for this kind of game, and so we're still confident to put it out. It's 2012, and obviously there aren't another 10 years of legs under the PSP, but we have this really cool way in which we can deliver the game on UMD, and we are planning a simultaneous launch on PlayStation Network when the game releases in June. And so we can cater to PSP Go users, we can cater to PlayStation Vita users, and it's our intention to do everything possible to make sure the game is compatible at launch on Vita as well. So we look at it as a really big audience.
Okay. Now, here's the hardball question that you're not going to like. Sting had released a couple of games in Japan for the PSP, Blaze Union and Gloria Union. It seems like Atlas has published just about every other Sting game in North America. Is there a reason why these were passed over?
There is no one reason for those titles or for any title that I can ever cite. There are a number of factors, though, that come into play. In most recently, a lot of the times it's been an issue of looking at specific titles and just thinking about, based on what the game is, how feasible or how likely the game's path to profitability would be. Because at the end of the day, we still want to be able to continue our business and keep the lights on. And I'm not necessarily saying that any one game is less likely to be profitable here, but I think in some specific cases it was maybe decided that the projects would have a tougher path to come here. And there are other factors as well. A lot of times the amount of voice acting that's in a game. For example, we got Growlancer Wayfarer of Time that comes out in July, and we look at that game as a project that it's been. Growlancer 4 was expected or desired by fans in North America for a very long time. 2 and 3 came out, 5 came out, and fans were asking. 4 is considered one of the best in the series. And so we're going to release it, and we were very upfront about the fact that apart from the anime cutscenes, we wouldn't be able to voice the game. That was one of those difficult decisions that we had to make because we wanted to bring the game out, and yet we knew that it would be far more expensive and difficult for us to go ahead and do the full localization. It's not that we didn't want to. It's not that we were looking to cut a corner. It was just a matter of, is it better at the end of the day for us to be able to deliver this game in English, with this one concession for our fans, or for it to never come to the States? And sometimes we're able to make a decision like that, and then sometimes we just decide it's not going to work.
Yeah, it blows my mind sometimes. I forget what it was. Oh, Xseed announced Way of the Samurai 4 being a digital-only title. Mm-hmm. And we had people on our message boards on our Facebook saying, I'm not going to buy this game because it's digital only. And I don't get it, because I'd rather have more games in English, no matter the format, than no games in English.
There's two things on that. I think I would imagine that people with that sentiment, it's less about the fact that it's less about viewing digital as a negative from the standpoint of I think a lot of our fans too, they really want to own games, and they like being able to hold the game in their hands. I don't think that's a reflection on the game at all. In fact, I was up in San Francisco and had a chance to run into the Xseed folks, and I saw Way of the Samurai 4 in person, and it actually is a fantastically entertaining game. You lose a little bit of visibility when you're just downloadable, and I mean, obviously, it's really nice to have a product on a shelf. But yeah, I'm definitely with you. There's such an opportunity. I think it's very analogous to something like a Kickstarter. Like the game wouldn't come out if it was, a physical package has a lot of costs and overhead and things involved that make it far less feasible. And it's kind of like if you can find a way to bring it over, wouldn't you rather have it in some form than not at all? And like you said, but I can understand when people have that reaction. I think it's a gut reaction. I think people just that maybe they don't want to be tied to a storefront, an online storefront. They want to physically hold the game. I like smelling manuals. You know that, John. I'm a notorious manual smeller.
Yeah, well, and I think that oftentimes, people's bark is worse than their bite. We've seen the massive uproar about, Diablo 3, which, even though it's not the reason Rob's not here, I'm going to say that it is. And, Blizzard comes out that it sold 6.7 million copies or whatever it was in its first week. So I think that sometimes we get people that are angry, but, at the end of the day, they decide that they want the game.
I've read a lot of articles recently about the merits of pre-orders and what are they for? What are reserving copies of games for? And for anyone who has that kind of that feeling or that sentiment, the one reality for small publishers, for niche publishers like us, is that those pre-orders are invaluable metrics and analytics for our retail partners to figure out whether a game should be brought in any sort of reasonable quantity. And when that isn't there, it's very difficult for them and then in turn for us to justify physically producing the game. Because again, physically producing the game, there are limits to how many quantities have to be made. And obviously you have all these shipping costs, there's the dry goods, the manual and things like that. So while I don't think any publisher wants to just, if everyone could make a physical product in addition to having a downloadable version, I think everyone would, because that's one more way to reach a customer that might not otherwise get the game. The reality is, though, sometimes there just isn't enough. It ends up being too big of a leap of faith, and we are endlessly optimistic and hopeful, and there's like cans of unicorn meat in the office. We are believers. But there's some leaps of faith that are just too big for us to make because we really do need to plan out a future that involves the light staying on here at Atlas.
Yeah. And, I would rather have the games come over than to not have them come over. So, it comes down to, I think a lot of people don't realize that while video games are fun and a lot of people view video games as artwork, which is not an argument I'm going to get into here, at the end of the day, it's a business. The people that are producing these are producing them so that they can feed their families and keep the lights on. So, we can't get everything that we want, but we can support the products and the companies that do the things we like Atlas. So, well, I appreciate both of you taking the time to talk to me today, and we're very excited for Gungnir, which is going to be out June 12th.
Gungnir is going to be out June 12th. That's right. And again, we're planning. It will be released at this time. The plan is UMD and also PlayStation Network. And again, our goal is to make sure that it's compatible for PlayStation Vita users day one. So if you're a Vita owner, remember that's a high priority for us, because we do believe that this game and then Growlancer Wayfarer of Time, we're going to see more and more digital or downloadable purchases.
Yes, which, by the way, if you don't own a lot of the Atlas PSP games, not too recently you guys dropped the price on a great deal of them.
Oh, John, you're so awesome for mentioning that. Absolutely, we did. And specifically the Sting games, the Depth Heaven games dropped pretty dramatically, 50% in some cases. And so whether you're a fan of the Sting games, the Depth Heaven games, or if you want to check out our Persona series of games on PSP, actually Persona 1, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, and Persona 3 Portable are all available currently on PlayStation Network, and they all work on the Vita, if you happen to be a Vita owner.
Yay! So I like those. So I also like Kenka Bancho, which is surprisingly hilarious.
Yeah, I know. I saw, maybe it was on Destructoid, some user post had been, or they like promoted it, and it was why Kenka Bancho was one of the best PSP games, or among the best PSP games of all time, and that's high praise. That's very high praise. It is an incredibly fun game, for sure.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you guys again. I appreciate it. And for our listeners, I guess this is the end of the podcast, because you've already listened to Rob ramble on about Diablo for, I don't know how long that podcast will be, 4.5 hours? Who knows? He could talk forever. But thank you.